Women's Cursillo at St. Cyril Methodius in Danville. My group is out at the Curia of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and I worship at St. Columba in Bloomsburg. And I have to say, I'm really excited to be here because it took us a little while to get here today, so we're sorry we slid into the back of the room. But I said to Ashley, I said a prayer in the car, that, okay, God, maybe you just want me to do the homework, but somebody else needs to give the talk. But I guess I'm supposed to give the talk, so here you go. I showed up. So, Whom Shall I Send is the book, and we're on chapter 4, The Temptations of Leadership. And for me, there were two key truths that were shared in the chapter right off the bat. A leader must be the one who can empower others, the one who literally gives away the power that they have. And it's really easy for any leader, especially Christian leaders, to become so full of themselves that their ambitions get the best of them. So we've all seen it happen time and time again, whether in the movies or in real life. The knight in his shiny suit who rides his trusty steed falls off his horse. And we're crushed, right? He just stopped being that hero right before our eyes. I experienced this years ago. I found myself scanning through the channels one Sunday morning, and I found this minister on TV, and he was giving this message, and I couldn't turn the channel, and it was so not like me. And so I was listening to what his message was, and he was talking about tithing. Now, as a young professional, money didn't go very far back then, still doesn't, but whole different point. And I had not really subscribed to tithing to that degree, and I was just dumbstruck by what he was saying, and it really affected me. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. I'm going to have to tune into him again. And so, shortly thereafter, I was starting a new parish, and when I went to do the information to join that parish, there was a packet mailed to me all about the parish, everything that was available to do there, and all the missions and values, and there was a whole thing about that they were a tithing parish. And I don't know that I'd ever heard that terminology placed on a parish before or advertised, but I chuckled and I thought back to this televangelist who had talked to me that day about tithing, and I committed that day after his show that one day I was going to get on that tithing thing. And now apparently was the time, right? So from that day forward, I trusted the Lord and that great information shared that day and started tithing. And so jump ahead, and every now and then I would check in and read or watch one of the episodes by this minister, because not that it took anything away from my Catholic faith, but that he just had a different way of talking about some things, and it was speaking to me at that moment. Over time, I eventually kind of moved away from that. But I remember jumping ahead just a year or so later, and all of a sudden, I saw something random on the news about this particular individual, and something about the church's corporate jet and money, and my knight just fell off his horse. Just like that. And I thought, well, how did he touch my heart so much that day for the Lord, and yet he completely just fell into a puddle on the ground? How did that happen? And it's so easy. And so as Christian leaders, because that's what we're all called to be, that's why we're at school of leaders, right? So Christian leaders, we got to be really extra careful about our leadership and make sure it stays as a true leader. So the author of our book talked also about the 3 demons of ambition. And he used the temptations of Christ in the desert to help us understand these. So the first was that that Satan asked Jesus to turn stone into bread. And as we read in the chapter, he wasn't really just asking him to feed himself. It was a much deeper thing, in that he was tempting Jesus with the loss of power, the loss of security. Well, Jesus is already the best. He can't get any better, right? He's already perfect. So the scary part is, could he be less? Could one day it all fall apart and he'd be less? So that's what Satan is tempting him with. So how does this apply to us as leaders? Well, if your main focus is holding on to your job as the leader, your focus is already taking you from the actual mission, which is to serve. To be a leader for Christ means we will often stand alone or apart, because doing what is right is just that important. Cursillo leaders must be concerned about upholding what is right and not be concerned with keeping the position intact. As lay directors, spiritual directors, and secretariats, we're called to stand on the truth, whether it's popular or not. We are disciples and foremost, and for the form, I can't even say that today. We are disciples first and foremost for the Lord. So that's where we have to stay in that role. This is likely what happened to my TV minister, right? People elevated him, and then he elevated himself, and then, boom, right? So he succumbed to the title and lost the mission Christ had given him. In my work life, there's right and there's wrong, and then there's Dr. So-and-so's right and Mrs. So-and-so's wrong, and then, that just keeps going all day long. Everybody's got their version. In Cursillo, we're fortunate. There's a source for us to follow to stay on the straight and narrow path. It's our manual, and it's a beautiful thing, and the new one is coming out soon to give us even better clarity. The movement came from the Holy Spirit, and it was brought to us through Eduardo Bonin. We can easily be tempted to want to add a little something here or change a little something there because we're humans and we all think we have these great ideas. And we can even tell ourselves that those great ideas came from the Holy Spirit too. And they probably did. But this already came from the Holy Spirit and we can trust in it. After all, that's how the movement began. And if we take a modern take on it, is it the same movement? I'll go a step further. Same was said about the Catholic Church, right? Then there was Reformation, and came the splits, and it happened time and time again. And yet, the beauty of the Catholic Church has survived 2,000 years. So the beauty of Cursillo, in its original form, can too. We have to be the leaders that let it happen, and make it happen. The beauty of Cursillo will be in our steadfastness. And the Holy Spirit will give us our mission to bring, or has given us our mission to bring others to Christ. We must always remind ourselves of that each and every day to stay on that course. And sometimes each and every second, right? It's hard. It's hard. So the second demon of ambition was that Jesus is told to throw himself off the cliff. Satan is telling him to prove himself, to show off his power, to prove his greatness. A leader needs to lead. That's a verb, as in taking action, right? This is their calling. A leader does not need to prove he or she is a leader. That's a noun, right? And that's all about their calling card. We need to stick with the verb and be in the mode of calling, or sticking to our calling, I should say. Only bullies need to throw their weight around, and Christian leaders do not have to fascinate. When God calls us, that's really the only affirmation we should need. So how does this apply to us as leaders? The Cursillo movement is about the glory of God. He's the only one who gets the glory, the only one who gets the throne. We can get our rewards now, or we can hold tight for the greater rewards in heaven. It's a daily, sometimes every minute-to-minute choice. The third demon ambition is Satan tells Jesus all the kingdoms of the world will be his if he bows down to Satan. This temptation is all about being the leader, not the servant. As Cursillo says, we have an important role to bring the word of Christ, regardless of any official title we may or may not have. We are reminded in Ephesians 6:12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the directors of the world of darkness, against the spirits of wickedness in high places." So at home, we've been studying a book about St. Michael and the angels, and it's been fascinating. And I've never been so keenly aware of good and the bad angels. I don't think about Satan as being a bad angel. I just think about him as being Satan. And in fact, I don't like to think about him, right? But he's an angel, and he's a bad angel, and he's got a lot of friends. This imagery in Ephesians is troubling, but only if we forget that God sent each and every one of us a guardian angel to protect us throughout our entire lives, from conception till we are fully in God's capable arms. So they're always there with us as his direct support. His support is all around us, and the good outnumber the bad angels 2-1. Isn't that good? You didn't hear that today, didn't you? Because that world will tell you the opposite. Don't ever forget the end of the story. God wins. Hello? We all know the end. That's the best part. We just got to stick with him. So how does this apply to us as leaders? Well, in contrast to the last verse, Paul tells us that Jesus' presence filled the environment like a pleasing fragrance. When we are a true disciple, we can be the breath of fresh air that someone else was seeking. When someone sees us all aglow with the joy one can only get from Jesus, they want that glow. Don't they, Chuck? They all want that glow, right? So you learned that. So we've been watching the Wild Goose series on forum.org. And in our last episode, Father Pavanka mentioned the quote we've heard before, attributed to St. Francis: preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. Right? Sounds great. But Father Pavanka said Pope Francis challenged that. Not to say St. Francis was wrong, but Pope Francis said, but you gotta go the next step. Don't stop there. You have to then go say the words that prove where you got the gumption to stick to that life in the first place. And that is from God. We must always use our words. We're leaders. We are disciples. Once we have piqued someone's interest with our joy-filled life, we need to share the source of that joy as well. The only true leader is the servant, the one who sees the needs of the larger community. Our mission is not to lead others to ourselves, but to lead Jesus, or to Jesus. Hard morning. De Caloris.
De Caloris.